Oh, shut up! Thank you. Now I can finally get some... Okay, that's it. Where are you going? Oh, come on. After 3 movies, you think I'd realize something always happens with the goddamn mirror. We don't want to hurt you. We just want you to join us. Well, that's a compelling offer, but I think I'm gonna have to pass. Well, that's a shame. But that does mean that this will be way more fun. I'm not interested. Full body dismemberment. Have to do, I guess. Hey, if you could shut up for a few hours while I do this review, that'd be great. Thank you. Freaking finally. You know, you'd think you'd be used to killing an alternate evil version of yourself at some point, but you never really are. Anyway, hello YouTube. So today we will be looking at a movie that I've already done a review of. Sort of. Okay, I did a written review of this 2 years ago, so yeah, needless to say, my opinion has changed on it somewhat, but I will still be taking some points from that. So, without further ado, let's get into the history of Army of Darkness. Like I said last time, Sam Raimi wanted Evil Dead 2 to be set in the medieval era, but due to budget restraints was only able to at the very end. After his next film, Darkman, did well, Universal partnered with Dino De Laurentiis and work began on Medieval Dead, later renamed Army of Darkness. Scott Spiegel was working on another project, so Sam turned to his brother Ivan to help co-write the film. After working with Sam on Darkman, Danny Elfman did a track for the score, with the rest being done by Joseph Loduca, who had been the composer since the first film. Since they used digital cameras, there wasn't much concern about how long they filmed. Because of this, Sam allowed for lots of minor changes on set, most of which he came up with. During post-production, Universal had lots of power over the final product. After a screen test, the ending was changed to be more positive, but apparently the original ending did make its way to theaters outside of the US. After the film was finished, there was a delay on release due to Dino and Universal getting into a dispute over the character Hannibal Lecter, but eventually a deal was brokered between them. The MPAA was also a problem, big shock, as they gave it an NC-17. Nearly 10 minutes had to be cut to get an R rating. It was a bomb in the US, but managed to gain more overseas and made about $8 million of its $13 million budget back. Much like any entry in this series, it has had countless re-releases on DVD and in theaters. Reviews were very mixed by both critics and fans due to the change in tone and undeveloped character relationships, but it's gained much more appreciation over the years. It's set the norm for Ash's character ever since, and is hailed as being a comedic dark fantasy that can stand on its own. Alright, you primitive screwheads, let's get into it. Alright, so this one picks up right where the last one left off, with Ash accidentally being sent back in time into 1300 AD, wherein he was being praised as a hero, so of course now he's a slave and about ready to be executed. Continuity has never really been the series' forte, but he proves that he not only knows what the Deadites are, but also, more importantly, knows how to deal with them. Because of this, the Wise Man, who, yes, is seriously just called the Wise Man, decides to put Ash on a quest to retrieve the Necronomicon. However, he has to remember some words and say them before he picks it up. Those words being Klaatu Barada. You know, it's on the tip of my tongue. I totally forgot what it was, though. I I knew it a second ago, I could have sworn. Anyway, so yeah, Ash goes to try and retrieve them, however, he forgets the words, so an army of the dead is unleashed, led by Bad Ash, who was created by a little tiny misadventure that Ash had in a windmill. So now it's up to Ash to not only save this whole kingdom, get back to his own time, but also become the hero that he was always destined to be. So, the story for this one is a bit of a mixed bag. The pacing is honestly very quick. Now, a lot of this happens when Ash is going to go get the Necronomicon, and to be fair, a lot of the blame can be put onto the MPAA, as, well, like I said, they caused 10 minutes to be cut, and a large portion of that was from that middle part. So, while there are still versions that do have that edited in, most of the time, and most of the more cleaned up versions, which are also the ones that I tend to see most often because I live in the US, those are the ones that tend to, well, just have a lot of character motivation and development cut out, and probably the thing that suffers the most from this is Ash and Sheila and Henry the Red, as there was originally a scene with Henry the Red as that explained why he went and helped out Arthur's men at the end, but with Ash and Sheila, there's nothing. They literally just have 3 scenes together, and yet she's still his love interest, and is the whole entire reason that he ends up trying to save a whole entire civilization. Now, it has been speculated that there was still some more deleted stuff, but still, even at that, I don't think that really would have made their relationship any more convincing, especially since their first scene together, she is trying to kill him. Seriously, she wants him dead because she thinks that he's responsible for the death of her brother, not the guy who was in charge of the army. No, this random guy who was just so happened to be there. I don't get that. Like, the guy that was actually in charge of the army is right there. Blame this other guy instead, who, from all that she knows, is just a random soldier. I don't get it. But yeah, still a lot of character relationships and development, as well as tone, tend to suffer a lot from this. Speaking of tone, it's very different than the first two. Like I've said before, the second one did focus more on comedy, however, this one brings that up to an even greater degree, as now this is mostly a comedic fantasy instead of having any real horror in it. Now, it's not horrible. I mean, there is still some really good and funny moments in this, and there are little bits and pieces of horror, most notably during the windmill scene, and even more notably during the extended windmill scene, which actually does have some creepier moments, and honestly makes no sense when edited down, because it just means that Ash saw his reflection in the mirror and ran right into it, like you do. I don't know. But still, the lack of horror in this is still a problem, and as a fan of the horror from the first two, I would have liked to have seen it be utilized at least a little in this, so it is a bit of a shame that it isn't. That said, the comedy is still very good, though. So, in that aspect of positives, though, there's some really great action in this movie. Seriously, the final fight scene is really creative and cinematic. I really did have a lot of fun with it, and this was at the point where the film started to slow down a little bit more, so it gave you more time to enjoy it, and I really had a lot of fun there, and this is kind of why I think that the film should have kept its pacing a little bit more slowed down, as I understand that it could have been done to make the audience feel just as out of place as Ash was, but still, I think that if it gave a little bit more time to seeing these characters' development a little bit more and more of the creativity, then we could have really had a much better and more universally agreed that it's a great film. However, as is, it does still have a lot of critics, and I can understand that, but there's still some stuff in this ending here and just overall all of the fights in this that are just really awesome and just sort of show why this film is still beloved. That, and there's also the effects, which I would be missed if I didn't mention, because they are fantastic in this. Seriously, KMB did a wonderful job here. The skeletons are very silly, but they're also very creepy at the same time. They work just at this perfect balance, and I could totally see them being put in some much more legitimate horror movie, like, I don't know, Poltergeist or something. I could totally see them being fit in there very fluently, and I really do love their look. There are so many of them, and each of them are very unique. And then there's also just the overall effects work, just on the characters and the actors and stuff, and I think that that just looks really great too. But another part where they really shine is with the stop motion, which is fantastic in this movie. I've criticized some of the effects for these films in the past because while I do really admire the effort that was put in, that doesn't mean that all the effects in them were good. Most notably with the first one, as that one, the Necronomicon in that, just looking at that is just, God, yeah, it just looks like it was taped together, quite literally. It looks like it's just made out of tape that was painted over. It's honestly not that great, but hey, at the very least, there were some really legitimately good moments in that film, and it did set up what would eventually keep on evolving with the effects work, and I really do like what ended up happening here. And this one's probably the most fluent that the effects have been, with a lot of inspiration from Ray Harryhausen, and that's very visible here, and I really do love it. So for the story, I'm very mixed on it. There are some great stuff in this, like the action, the comedy, and the special effects, but then the pacing is also off, and character motivation can be lost, and it isn't really fitting with the tone of the rest of the films. That said, though, it is still a very fun ride, and while yes, it does sort of skip over stuff, it is still a very enjoyable film. So for the story, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, because, I mean, it's not perfect, and there are obviously a lot of problems with it, but I still overall enjoy it, and the more that I watch it, the more that I come to. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the story, so now let's get into... Oh, buzz off! I'm not done yet! Jeez, some evil forces can be so freaking impatient. So, yeah, with that, let's get into the characters. So for the characters, let's start off in a bit of a reverse order by starting off with the least important characters and making our way up to the most. So with that, let's start off with the blacksmith, and I really like him. Seriously, he's actually a really great side character. He hardly says a line, but he still conveys so much. You can just tell how loyal this character is. Like, he would follow Ash to the very end. And when Ash just says that he's going to give up on all this, you can just see the blacksmith's heart break. It's really sweet. Seriously, I love this character. Despite him hardly even having a line, he conveys so much personality and emotion, and I really love it. So, yeah, he might not be important, but I still really enjoy him, and hey, he's one of the ones who would stand by Ash through thick and thin, so yeah, I enjoy him for that. Then there's Henry the Red. Like I said before, there was a deleted scene with him that gave him a bit more character. However, as is, he's fine. I mean, to be fair, in the opening part, he does actually have a lot to do. Like, he's got some pretty awesome interactions. He's the reason why Mr. Fancy Pants is now a thing, which is awesome, by the way. And I really do enjoy him. And he conveys so much. He is so much fun. In particular, I love when he's just laughing in the face of Arthur's guards, quite literally, as he runs out. It's really fun, and you can just tell the actor was having a blast with this. So, it kind of makes it suck that he doesn't really do that much else after he leaves Arthur's castle. I mean, he comes back in the end, but that's kind of it. I would have really liked it if that middle scene with him had been left in. Seriously, why was that ever cut out? It makes no sense why he's with Ash and Arthur's army now, because... there's no real reason. I mean, they say one line in the movie where they're like, hey, yeah, we'll go get Henry the Red's team, and that's kind of it. That's just all It's all the explanation that we need. Because I would hate to see that happen. I mean, seriously, like, why cut that out? It's an important moment. I mean, it's not like there's even any swearing or blood there. It's really weird. A lot of the stuff that was cut out for the MPAA had no real blood or violence in it. Could have very easily trimmed that 20-minute fight scene at the end down, but no. Let's get rid of character motivation. I don't know. So, yeah, Henry the Red is fun, but he doesn't really do that much. Then there's the Wise Man. I find him to be pretty enjoyable. Now, much like the blacksmith, he doesn't really do that much. Okay, yes, he is pretty much the thing that gets the plot going, and he does give Ash his chainsaw in the pit and stuff, but other than that, he doesn't really do much of anything else. He's just sort of there for guidance, really, and he just sort of seems like he's there to just move things along a little bit, which is fine, and I don't think that the actor did a bad job with it. In fact, I think they did a great job with what he had. It's just, he's not overly interesting, and there isn't that much to him outside of that. He's essentially just Merlin without magic. And in place of that is necromancy, I guess, but he doesn't even really say any spell from the book. He knows one spell that we know of, and that is all. I would have really liked it if, I don't know, maybe he knew some more of the magic, or heck, even if he went with Ash to go and say the line. Seriously, why didn't he come with Ash? You know, for a wise man, he was really dumb to not write down the spell that could doom them all. Seriously, I'm sorry. I really do hate that everyone calls Ash an idiot for not remembering that. I mean, okay, yes, sure, he could have listened to it a little bit more, but to be fair, he was, oh, I don't know, kind of tied up with fighting little versions of himself in an alternate evil version from a mirror. I'm sorry that he amazingly forgot it during that. Oh, and also a whole day's ride. So yeah, believe it or not, he had other things on his mind, like, you know, going back to his own time period. I'm sorry that he forgot one word, but yeah, no, the wise man could have written it down or come with him. In fact, I don't get why no one came with Ash. I mean, yes, the wise man says, oh yes, this is his journey, and he's the only one who can fulfill this quest. But that doesn't mean that no one else can come with him. That doesn't mean that he can't get help. I mean, seriously, just because a book says something doesn't mean that that's the case. I mean, like, it's just, seriously, I just find it dumb that he just didn't write it down. I mean, it's not like they didn't have feather quill pens and paper back then. It's not like letters didn't exist. Sure, it was more fancy and he might not have understood the writing as well, but I'm sure that he could have gotten it, or at least it could have jogged his memory a little bit. But no, instead, let's just send him with no information on this whatsoever outside of just telling it to him twice, trying to get it to a third time, and, well, let's just hope that he does this. And if he's so serious about the spell, he could have made Ash stay there for a few more seconds to hear it. I'm sorry. I blame the wise man just as much as Ash in this scenario. But yeah, the wise man's still pretty decent of a character. Anyway, though, then there's Arthur. I really like Arthur. Honestly, a lot of the characters in this don't have much time on screen, but they still convey a lot of emotion and character, and I think that Arthur is one of the prime examples of that. It's just his actor, the way that he portrays him is what really makes it work. Every time he's on screen, he demands respect, and you can really buy that he is a king, and I really do love that about him. He just has this presence to him every time that he's there, but he also does have a little bit of character development, which, well, I didn't really think was overly needed, because, I mean, like I said, he doesn't really do that much in this movie. I still do appreciate it, and it does show that at the very least all the side characters, well, they might not have been entirely important to the story, did still at the very least have an arc here. Then there's Sheila. Alright, so before I mention Sheila's character, I'm gonna mention a little bit of history with her, because history lessons are fun. So, yeah, while I was doing research for the intro part, apparently, I just want to bring this out, because apparently Sheila's actress, while she was the main choice for the role, they actually had to present numerous other actresses, because that's what studios want. However, Beth Davis almost didn't get the role because Dino De Laurentiis liked someone else. So they actually had to do a whole nother screen test with her just to make sure that she got it. And I'm really glad about that because Beth Davis does a fantastic job as Sheila. She just believes every single line that she's saying, and in such a silly movie like this, that's really good. Actually, a lot of the actors in this do a great job, as a lot of them were primarily British actors and worked a lot in Shakespeare, so there's a lot of really great talent in this film, and it just makes it even more ironic to me that they're playing in something like this. I mean, it's really silly and over the top, but all of them give it their all, and that's very apparent with Beth Davis. And I think that she just adds so much to Sheila, but the problem is Sheila herself. She just isn't interesting. Like I said, she's probably the one that gets the most screwed over, whereas the pacing's concerned because she goes from wanting to kill Ash to apologizing to him after having seen the error of her ways and understanding the situation more, and then to falling in love with him and sleeping with him, then to being disappointed with them, then to being evil, then back to normal after getting stabbed and thrown off of a castle ledge. I have no idea how she survived that. Seriously, that is the stupidest part to me, is that she survived that. She got stabbed with a spear, thrown off a ledge, but oh yeah, she can walk that off because, her complexion changed. I don't know. Maybe because the evil was defeated, it brought her back to life? I don't know. But she doesn't even have an injury. She's not even, holding it or anything. She's not even, running Resident Evil when they get hurt style. She's just, yeah, okay, that was some minor inconvenience to me, but I'm fine overall. Seriously, there's not even a hole in her dress. Did Ash just flip the spear over or something? And even at that, it would still hurt, and she fell off a ledge, and I still don't get it. But yeah, Sheila just isn't an overly interesting character to me, as a lot of her motivation is just sort of tossed out just to have a love interest, or at least that's what it feels like. And, well, I will say that Beth Davis does a fantastic job with that. Her character just wasn't that interesting, and I would have liked for there to have been a few more scenes with her and Ash together before she becomes evil. Just sort of setting up a bit more of a relationship, but still, as is, she's fine, but there just isn't that much to her. Then there's Bad Ash. Oh my god. I love Bad Ash. She is so much fun in this. Seriously, this is where Bruce Campbell really gets to cut loose, as if he wasn't doing that already, and he's just so much fun as this. He puts on an accent, he has a shotgun blast on his face, a broken jaw, and it's just great. I freaking love Bad Ash. He is so much fun in this, but he still is a legitimate threat given that he has a huge army of the dead at his command, so he is still actually a threatening force. It's just that he's not really scary. He's more of a villain in a fantasy film than in an Evil Dead film, and that's probably the biggest problem that I would have with him, but still, he's just so much fun. I can completely overlook that. So before we get on to Ash, there's actually something kind of interesting that I noticed recently with all these characters. They all represent a part of him. Bad Ash would obviously represent, well, the what-if scenario. What if the evil corrupted him or possessed him, and what would he do in that scenario? Or just how far has he taken this, or just how far insane is he? And then there's Sheila, who's more of the emotional aspect of him. She's sort of the human side of him, which continues to deteriorate over the course of the films, as he pretty much has to act more like the Deadites in order to, well, fend them off properly. And I think that that's even more emphasized by the fact that she gets taken away by the Deadites and then comes back completely fine and healed after that. Just saying, if that wasn't intentional, then that's just a really big coincidence. Arthur would represent everything that Ash isn't. He's noble, he's heroic, and he's the sort of stereotypical hero, and that's everything that Ash isn't, really. He's none of those things, but that's what he wants to be a bit, and that's what, well, a lot of people think that he is. Then there's the wise man who, well, I think it's kind of obvious in some regard, but he can also represent Ash's understanding of the Deadites, or lack thereof, as yes, he does know how to deal with them, and he does know the basic rules, he doesn't really know anything about them, and that's sort of what the wise man kind of is the opposite of to me. Then there's Henry the Red, and honestly, I think that he just sort of represents Ash in general, just in a different time period, as they are very similar. Henry can be pretty sarcastic and has some pretty awesome lines and callbacks, which is pretty great. At the very least, he has some callbacks in a deleted scene. He's loyal to his people, but he doesn't really want to put them at risk, which I think is something that's very similar to some experiences that Ash has had. But he's not an idiot. He does know that if it comes down to living to fight another day or saving a whole civilization, he knows what the right call is to make there. Then there's the blacksmith, who, like I said before, he pretty much is completely loyal to Ash, and that's what I think he represents within him. I don't know, this is just kind of stuff that I just noticed, and I don't know if it was done intentionally, at all, but if not, it's a real coincidence. I just thought that was kind of cool. Might have been that, I don't know, maybe it just sort of shows that there was a little bit more thought into writing the characters than most people think, but I don't know, I think it was really cool. Then there's Ash. I've been waiting to talk about this portrayal of Ash since we started this. So this version of Ash is entirely different from any other. He's sarcastic, he's an a-hole, he doesn't really care about people, or at the very least he tries to become more detached, and he kind of enjoys inflicting pain on the Deadites just as much as they do on him, and I love that. I've heard some criticism onto these aspects, but honestly, to me, it makes total sense. He's dealing with a horrible situation that for him has happened over the course of a few nights by being sarcastic and just sort of trying to ignore it by putting up a defense. Then there's also the fact that he's lost pretty much everyone that he ever cared about to the evil. There's been no happy ending for him in any of these movies thus far. All that's happened is that his friends died, and then he tried to save some other people, but no matter what, he couldn't, and ultimately it was all in vain. And then he gets sent back to an era where he's just treated horribly yet again, until he's able to actually prove himself in any way. He's a man who has just seen too much of this at this point, and is just acting accordingly. And honestly, I think that that's what a lot of people don't really consider when thinking about him in this movie. He is a very broken man in this one, but he puts on a charade that he isn't, or at the very least, that's what it is to me. He's become more Deadite-like than he is person-like, honestly, and very least personality-wise, and I really find that interesting. He's sort of become what he hates in order to fight them properly, and it's stuff like that that I really love about this. And this has been a very natural progression. We see hints of this type of character in the second movie, so it's not like it was completely unfounded. And I really do like just seeing them going full force with it, and at this point, he's just had enough and just wants to leave all this behind. I really do like stuff like that, and it's really interesting to me. Seriously, I love the character development of Ash, and I honestly think that it's kind of underrated. I mean, yes, okay, people talk about how cool he is with the chainsaw and his awesome one-liners, and while all that stuff's great, people do tend to ignore the actual development side of him, and I really find that to be one of the best parts with him. It's all through Bruce Campbell's performance, who does such a great job portraying this character, and I really do love him in just, well, kind of anything, but in this role particularly, making me personally really disappointed about his retirement. Also because it's an odd number. Seriously, 39 years! You were 1 year away from having an even 40, but no! Let me just throw that all away. I mean, to be fair, he's gonna be playing him in a video game, but seriously, come on! You were one number away! I really like, I like even numbers more than odd. I'm slightly OCD, so it's like, yeah, it's annoying. But still, I don't know, there's just something really great about his performance. He knows just how much to ham it up, but also how to actually act in the role, and he doesn't go full force with either of those, but he finds this perfect balance in between, and it's just really awesome. And also, then there's the fact that, well, Ash enjoys inflicting pain on these things now. The Deadites are far more comedic in this one, but I don't think that that's without reason, honestly. I think that it's mostly because Ash just sort of sees through all their crap at this point. He sees them for what they really are, and also the fact that, well, this is an older version of the Deadites, so they were probably a whole lot less experienced, which might explain why they can be killed by just a shotgun blast in this one. Though they are very good at dodging, but still, they're a little bit less unified in their efforts, and they don't really go about a more psychological approach like they normally do. Instead, this is a lot more unexperienced version of them, and at this point, Ash can just sort of see through that and knows how to act accordingly to it. They do still frighten him sometimes, but still, for the most part, he enjoys hurting them just as much as they do him, and I really love stuff like that. It just sort of adds so much to him, and I really enjoy it. So, for the characters, I'm gonna give them an 8 out of 10 because, yes, a lot of them aren't on screen that much, and their development isn't really that important, or it's not really even there a lot of the time, but it's still really good, and I think that just for Ash's character development overall in the whole series, just sort of makes up for the lack of character for some of them, but even without that, I think that a lot of them give it their all, and that's what really adds into the characters. So for this movie overall, it's really fun. I mean, yes, okay, it has its problems, like, it's not the most interesting or scary out of the series, and yeah, it's not really this perfect balance of horror and comedy, and yeah, the comedy does overbalance the horror aspect, which is hardly even there, and it does sort of feel like a very different tone shift that doesn't really feel completely founded, but I do still think that it's still a very fun movie, even not looking at it as just its own thing, which even at that, which then it's a whole lot better even, as it's just sort of just conveying the style on its own, but even just looking at it as a part of the series, it is still rather fitting, and there's a natural transition to it. It's got some great action, effects, and humor, which I think can make up for some of the negatives with it, but still it does have some bad pacing, and the tone is off, which are things that I can't ignore, but there's things that I can look past. And also, there's a lot of really fun characters in this. Even if they aren't given that much time or attention, they're still very enjoyable, and there's still some great character development with Ash. So for this movie overall, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. It's probably my least favorite out of the original series, but still, this is a really great series, so that's not really saying much. It's still a fantastic film on its own, and as a part of the franchise. And I really enjoy it, as it's still pretty corny and fun, but it's also got some great stuff in there that makes up for the... But it's also got some great stuff in there that I think that fans of the series will really appreciate. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Army of Darkness, and next time we will be looking at Evil Dead 2013. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye.
Editing this video together, do.
Nice. It's not doing it. Come on. You gotta be kidding me. Who's laughing now, huh? Who's laughing now? You're messing with me. On a bad day. Alright, find the humor in this. That is it. I have had it. You want me so bad? Well, here I am. Let's party.